Hey, greetings to everybody. Just like to say, I hope everybody's doing well. Um, Couple of things we're going to talk about today, and I guess as the title says, we're going to talk about what we refer to as the conscious community and what it actually means to be conscious. I've always lived by a saying, it's something my father told me back in the day. He said to me, son, he said, average minds talk about people. That's wrong. Small minds talk about people. Average minds talk about events. Great minds talk about ideas. And that leads me into some of the ideals and thoughts that I have in my head. Fact of being conscious. I think being conscious is understanding your history, because if you don't know your history, you don't know where you came from, it's probably good. There's a likelihood that you won't know where you're going. It's an old saying back in the day, if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. History, and especially when it comes to the conscious community and black people, African Americans, black people all over the diaspora. We can go back and look at certain, intellectuals from the early 20th century, say 1920, 1930, 1940s. During that period, you had a number of scholars. Some of the most prominent, or one of the most prominent, was W.E.B. Du Bois. You also had Booker T. Washington. And these two men were at different ends of the spectrum. Dr. Du Bois was an academic, or more on the academic side of it. He was the one of the founders of the NAACP. I'm not versed in all the history, but I'm saying you should almost always have a basic understanding of your history and world history. Dr. Washington, he was the founder of Tuskegee, of course. I think everybody knows that. And his philosophy was a philosophy of hands-on, doing for self, understanding how to create. That's why he created Tuskegee, so he could give people that hands-on benefit, teach farming, how to grow your own crops, how to build your own business. Dr. Du Bois was more of a social activist, right? He thought that you could change things through social activism, which is why he was a forerunner or one of the founders of the NAACP. I can see both sides of the story. And, we looked at that particular point in history, these two giants, and have all thought, wow, it would have been cool if they would have come together and combined both sides of their philosophies, right? So you would have had that practical side, you had the academic side, you would have had the knowledge side, you would have had the hands-on side. You see where I'm going? Also, one of the greats of that particular era was Marcus Garvey, who had the Back to Africa. That was his slogan. He wasn't saying all black people go back to Africa, but we had to establish a connection with the mother continent. Mother continent for everybody, really. All life started on the continent of Africa. I think we're all in agreement with that. They actually did the research. They found some of the earliest remains of Homo sapien in Africa, which indicates that most life started in Africa, or most probably started in certain regions within the continent of Africa. So, I look at what Garvey did, or Marcus Garvey did, the Honorable Marcus Garvey did at that point in history when he had so many more obstacles to deal with than we have today. He built a steam line. He had his own auxiliary police force, women's corps. And these were beautiful black people who were doing things at that point, which you're trying to figure out why we can't do the same thing today. That, and when you look at history and you try to, use history to inform your present, because your present shapes your future. Feel me? What we do today, those in the future will learn from, or should learn from, some of the mistakes we make. Like we learn from some of the mistakes that were made in the past. One mistake I see is that, as I said before, if we could have united these dynamic individuals right? I wasn't there, of course, we know. I'm only 60. But you would have to say, well, maybe they were in conflict with each other to a certain degree. They were, right? We know that now. But think about if they could have combined the resources, what would have been done? This is almost, what, 100 years ago, right? But think what we had would have achieved within that 100 years if we had become united at that point with some of our top leaders. If the leadership had united, I think some of the criticism is based on the fact that, especially when you come to the NAACP, and like I say, I'm not an, I don't have all the information, so I can't give you, like, what I'm gonna probably tell you is third-hand information, which I got, as far as what really went down, and the people involved and what were their motives. Some of the top industrialists were, white men who were involved in the formation of the NAACP, and I'm sure they had their own agenda. I think they saw ways that they could benefit. Some people would say it was to control. That's a hard one, right? I think there was a level of control that they could exercise, but if the leadership had been, unified, there was they could have created balance. Like, I think anyone or any organization, individuals, groups, if they see an advantage, they will take that advantage. If you see a person slipping, and especially if you're, competing against people, say you're a business and you're competing in a particular market, and you see that your competition isn't, focusing on their customer service. You might increase your customer service and focus on customer service while also highlighting the fact that they don't. Um, when we look at, you know, what we can learn from the past, I think it's time for, those within the conscious community to put aside our differences for the sake of the collective. You know, I was watching a couple of some of the main people in the conscious community, and at times you get the impression maybe we've lost sight of what the real mission is. Uh, we all have egos, right? We all have pride, but I've learned over my lifetime not to let my pride and my ego stand in the way of accomplishing the goals that we set out to accomplish. Um, that becomes crucial. And I've been rambling on for what, maybe about 10 minutes without getting to the real source of what the title represents, which is, if we are truly conscious and we really represent the conscious community and we want to be the leadership within that community, we have to start showing the skills to the people that let them know that we're not just talking the talk, but we're willing to walk the walk. If we're talking about a lack of businesses in the community, and we have to gather those skills so that we can help build communities, build businesses in our community. And when I say skills, I'm talking about concrete, hard skills. The skills such as learning how to use the current technology to benefit. How, say, creating, like when you go to a lot of the communities, you see that, and especially big urban areas, say Detroit, especially Philly, Chicago, Milwaukee, New York, which consists of the five boroughs, Brooks, Brooklyn. Um, you see that, especially when you're talking about home ownership, which was a vital foundation, is part of the American dream. Ownership of those things that you put your effort into. You work hard all your life. You should own what you work for, right? You shouldn't have a home that you worked all your life and you put all this equity and money into, and at the end of the day, you really don't own the home. Okay, I'm getting off track again, and I hope to be able to tie everything together at some point. But what I'm trying to set is just this pattern and this message that says that we have to become self-sufficient. And it goes back to what I just said about, the bigger cities, and when you see the number of foreclosures, and especially in certain, areas of, say like Philly and Detroit, it's hardest hit are the black communities where you see a high rate of foreclosure. Those foreclosure properties drive down the property values, which drive down the tax base, which makes it hard for those communities to access those tax base to, put into their schools within the community and to access other funds. So, the ideal is that, and this is just an ideal because, like I said in the beginning, small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideals. This is just an ideal. Collectively, say over the next 5 years, because, really, I see a 20-year window before things get intolerable, really. But, within a 5-year period, say nationwide, we could create a system where, and I'm not sure how it would be done yet, but, that's the concept of the ideals. Everybody's adding to it. You might have the ideal. Remember? It isn't about what I can do, right? It's about what we can do. So, the key is that, you have to build up that network. So, say we build up a network, and I mean, this is some crazy stuff, but say we would buy these huge 3D printers, which could create these minimum structures, but you can build upon it. And I think everybody needs to go watch some of the videos based on it because these are technologies that will change our very foundation of our culture, society. And you could say the National Foreclosed Home Builder Project could purchase these, and we could start out some of the hardest hits area of the country, say like in Detroit, because when you go to Detroit, and I would hope everybody would get a chance. It's a beautiful city. It does have some bit of, like I say, the you go to certain communities in Detroit, you'll see the devastation that the foreclosure and that subprime market and the housing crisis caused. And this is back in 2008, and we're going to go more into it. So I'm throwing a lot out there, and we're going to break it all down. Remember what I said in the beginning, or the first two videos. My concept, just my personal, as an ideal, is to create a format. So, within a 12-month period, and so, moving forward, you can accomplish a lot in 12 months if you're focused and dedicated, right? And that's the key. We have to become focused and dedicated. So you buy this huge 3D printer, right? I've seen videos of it, right? And they sit these things down and they print out these abodes. They're basic homes. But that's a start because now we have a concrete, something that we can actually see, we can feel, we can go from city to city. And I mean, that's why I say 5 years. It's not going to happen overnight. You know what I'm saying? There would be planning. You would have to come up with the capital, which isn't that hard, man. Trust me. When you're working as a team and when you're committed to a particular goal, and you're passionate about it, and people see you're really serious about it, they want to help, because everybody at the end of the day, they want to see you succeed, they want to see themselves succeed, right? I think, misery breeds misery, success breeds success, happiness breeds happiness, right? And so, when you build this concept out, and especially in my city where you have a number of communities that are affected by foreclosures, you go from community to community, see the vacant lots. And you know that at one point a home was sitting there, so you could go from your city to city. Of course, this is just an ideal. And this is something we could sit around and we could talk about all day, but if we never start, working on it, so I would say, let's build that type of system where we can actually come up with concepts, ideas, take them from the conceptual stage and create, a working framework where we can bring all the resources, the talent, and everything together because we got it out there, man. I know guys that can do amazing, carpenters. These dudes are carpenters. So the ideal isn't that far-fetched when you think about it. Of course, on a conceptual stage, like, wow, it's a lot of work, right? But it's not a lot of work if a lot of people are involved. Well, black people can't work together. Well, that's not true either, right? We know we can. We see the results when we do work together. I remember they had a place called Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? Where the black people were the main proprietors of all the businesses within that particular area, right? Now, I'm not the only one who knows that. Everybody should know that. If you don't know it, look it up. Black Wall Street, you heard it. You probably heard the term used or thrown around. But Black Wall Street actually did exist at one time. And these were communities that were vibrant. They were economically sound. Had banks, right? Every service you needed was supplied by that particular community, and it grew. And of course, we know what happened. People came in, they saw the success. They were doing better than the other surrounding communities, which were white. You know, what do you say? So, if we need examples of success, and we say things like we haven't done it, that's not true. We have. Are we doing it now? To a certain degree, yes. I mean, I see so much improvement over the last 5 years. Just in my city alone, we have certain areas of the city that are starting to come back. I mean, that are starting to build businesses within that community, hire people out of that community, which is really what we're looking for at the end of the day. Like I said, I'm throwing out a lot. You know, I've had a lot of thoughts. I've been thinking for like 5 or 6 years. I keep my notebook handy. We're gonna start getting into that. But this first couple of videos are just about the introduction, getting to know each other. Hey, I'm gonna start trying to get better production at some point. That's gonna come because there's so much we can achieve, and I always look at it like we're complex. I don't think there's an individual on this planet that doesn't have complexities about who they are, different aspects of their personalities, and no one person is the same because I like chess. Not everybody likes to play chess, right? And I use chess as an analogy for life, right? And we'll get more into that, how chess benefits you on a psychological basis, right? It helps you think 4 and 5, 3, 4 moves ahead. And that's beneficial. You know what I'm saying? So I like to thank everybody. The one thing I would like to express to everyone is that this has to be a team effort. Like I said, building wealth is a team effort. Individual wealth is cool, but it only helps the individual. And I think uh, we all have a side of us that we do like to help, but self-preservation says that we have to take care of home first, right? So at times it might seem odd that we can't bring everything together. But like I say, we're gonna talk more. We're gonna get more into it, and so I'll see everybody at the crossroads. Peace.